I'm coming home to you every night, every night, every night, every night. I'm the colorless sunrise. It's never good.
All the AP English essay styles really helped me, especially when we went over the synthesis essay, the rhetorical analysis, and the argumentative. When we had to write those in class multiple times, especially under a time limit, I learned how to constrict my writing into different styles and flows and make my points sound more realistic when I bring in facts and sources to document all my data. I believe it really helped me with other outside reading and writing sources as well.
One of the biggest things this year was the writing process itself. We did a lot of those those circle groups and kind of went over it together. And it kind of helped me see how my writing can develop and how it's kind of deferred. And also procrastination, kind of fought that off a lot, especially with the summer project, kind of pushed it off till late. And then this year I kind of developed that and done a lot better.
I'm the wind that's in your hair that ruffles you up.
Class helped me get a better score on the ACT. I went from a 24 to a 26 because I learned to understand content and time my writing.
You could find a reason. You could let.
The thing that improved my writing the most was the use of rhetorical fallacies, especially extending the use of short declaratives and rhetorical questions, because I've always used them before, but I haven't really known how to use them properly.
No, I won't blame you. I just
Use of rhetorical devices incorporated into my writing, I've been able to better myself and get better grades on my papers throughout the year. At first, I was procrastinating and I wasn't doing that well on my papers, getting B's and C's. But then throughout the year, I've been adding the rhetorical concepts that we've been doing when we've been getting tested regularly, and by doing that, I've helped my writing grow.
go. I'm coming home to you.
Critical readings have really helped me within my writing because I know that there's a claim that I have to look for, and by reading closely I can find the certain strategies that the writer implies that will help me find the claim easier.
Closely reading has helped me because when I read something at first, I always used to just read through it really fast and I never took it in at all. But now I've learned that when I take my finger, and actually a technique is when you take your finger and you actually read the words with your finger, like you go down the line, it's really helped me slow down the mental reading process, and I've been able to soak in each word and take in the individual meaning of the context and really understand the bigger claim that the author is trying to make. Especially when it came to talking to the text and underlining certain points and circling other words, it really just stuck it out, so when I'd have a time limit, I could go back and easily find points I wanted to make.
Writers' workshops.
Well, I mean, when I have a group of 4 people editing my stuff, it makes it so much easier because then they notice mistakes that I had made that I hadn't seen before.
I agree, and though it may have seemed harsh sometimes about the things that they wrote, I really realized that they actually help, and I should just learn that it's not constructive criticism, and they actually ended up helping me further my writing.
And they gave us pros that they liked about our paper, which made us feel better about ourselves when writing the paper, even though they gave us some negative comments. But it got outweighed. Ha ha ha.
The one technique that really helped me within my writing was the use of self-reflections. I was able to reflect over how easy or difficult it was to write one particular essay and ponder on what I needed to accomplish when writing the next one. We got our first reading assignment in the summer, and I remember writing the self-reflection for that and thinking, I better not say how I procrastinated until the very last day before it was due. But now I realize that I can say whatever I want in the self-reflections because they're for me. And now I learned that I shouldn't procrastinate because it just stresses you out and you won't be able to get anything done. How did revising your papers work out for you?
Well, what really helped is that by the time that you were done, you had like 3 or 4 drafts of it. And with the writers' workshops, you got 3 or 4 other students helping you out in the essay. So you really got to see what other people thought of your essay and get an outside perspective of it. And the really big thing...
Did you just say thing?
Did you just say thing?
Did you just say the word that must not be spoken?
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot!
How did Rainier's English class help you to find rhetoric in writing?
me understand rhetorical purpose by learning the different rhetorical concepts, fallacies, and different terms. Because even though some of it I understood, I learned a lot of new terms and what they're actually called.
Yeah, I remember T4ing it, especially with a lot of the stuff we did in class, and I'd be able to see, okay, here's a simile, here's a metaphor, here's a parallelism, and you could just write it out and really help on the ACT. You'd circle it, especially with the synthesis essay, and outline what rhetoric the writer was using.
Yeah, now I can easily include it in my own writing and find it in others.
Yeah.
Searching to find myself.
So, Tom, what do you think you've learned about your writing this year?
I learned a lot of different things about the way I write and form paragraphs. I usually do a lot of long paragraphs, and I've learned that shortening them up actually helps the reader understand my essay more and helps my point across even further. And I've also learned that I use a lot of the same rhetorical devices, and I've learned that that can sound repetitive. So I can really try to switch it up, and that makes my paper sound a lot more interesting when I try to employ a little bit of everything in my paper.
Yeah, I'd agree. The biggest thing with me is I've kind of learned to get more purpose in my writing. I mean, you just write like 5 pages. It's not quality if you don't put the work into it. So I really like to analyze and just take my time with it. And before, I'd always just write my essay, maybe look at it once for like grammar mistakes. Now I read over it a lot, and I actually do it actively while writing it. So I like to get a lot of rhetorical devices into it.
I find is you. I can hardly stand myself.
Throughout the year, I've learned that when being given voice memos, instead of having Rainier write down words on the paper, I found that it's more personal because I can hear his voice. And when seeing what he's writing down on my paper, I take it in a harsh and negative way. But when hearing his voice at the same time, it gives it more of a personal tone, and I feel like it's not as harsh, and that I'm learning from it instead.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would also say that you have to find a certain medium within your papers, because you don't want to have your paper going and rambling on and on for so many pages, because then he's just going to think that you're trying to make things up, when really you should try to keep it at a strong length. And another point is that I also struggled with having my paper too short, so you just have to make sure you can get the thought process flowing and make sure that you can elongate your words further.
Yeah, I've learned that when I take my paper and I shorten it, I make it precise. Instead of trying to elaborate more than I really need to do, I
For reading the graphic essay Show and Tell by Scott McCloud, I have deepened my understanding. There is picture specific, which is when the picture tells most of the story rather than the words. We also learned about word specific, which is when the words tell the story rather than the picture itself. This helped a lot because I have never heard of a picture that exists with just words. It may use a small picture, but it's mainly comprised of the words explaining what the picture actually means. This helped a lot to employ imagery in my writing. I used this imagery technique in one of my papers about age being a reason to license experience. And this really helped employ an imagery metaphor, and it really helped extend the meaning of my paper and deepen the thoughts I had.
I won't blame you. I just turn and go. I'm coming home to
The pop culture unit because of how much we learn about things that are relevant in today's society. We read this one essay about movies and the cliches they tend to follow, and it just really showed me how much movies have changed from back then to now. And I really learned about how reading through written words you can understand movies better and the pictures better in movies. And I also liked it because of the relevance it had to what I want to get into in life, which is writing or cinematography. And it really helped me understand all the process that goes into the movies and writing and all the stuff you need to do when incorporating symbolism.
coming home to
My favorite unit would probably be the Science and Technology unit. My favorite readings were Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In Frankenstein, we questioned what it was to be a human, which was kind of difficult to answer. There was no exact definition. The note sheet that we used helped me keep track of the characters, the places, and the events in order in which they happen in the storyline. And then in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I found the chart for confusing vocabulary terms to be very useful, as a lot of the terms I did not know throughout the chapter, and it helped me later on when they came up again. And then we also covered the in vitro fertilization issue when we talked about what the value of life is and we evaluated the good and the bad coming from our rapid advancements in technology, and how doctors are being left to make decisions for those who can't, like, challenge themselves with a moral.
The food synthesis unit was my favorite unit out of all of the ones that we went over. It showed us how to make a food synthesis essay by using multiple sources that could help us with our writing. It also showed us that you're trying to look for the claim, and then by looking for the claim, I have a better understanding of what you're trying to truly write. I also enjoyed the poems about berry picking and showing different ways of imagery and the colors and tastes of the foods can be altered so that the poems are more understandable.
No matter what we face.
I really like the education unit because it made me really appreciate education, have a better understanding, a different perspective of it. In the article Best in Class, we learned about how education wasn't about receiving awards or being valedictorian, but instead establishing your future. Also, in School by Kyoko Mori, we learned about Japanese perspective and how in America we kind of take education for granted, and we really shouldn't. And because of that, I've kind of applied myself better, and also Socratic circles have really changed for me. More of the time I think outside the box, and I better analyze articles that we read for them and better prepare.
It don't matter, it don't matter. 'Cause the reason that
My favorite unit was the photography unit, and within that there was 3 different essays that we did. The photosynthesis essay, Dear Photograph, and the Creeper Vignette. And out of all of those, my favorite one was the Dear Photograph essay because it allowed me to look back and see how I've progressed throughout the years.
I'm here is the same through all these years. I'm not changing.